I actually really liked this book. No, it was not for me. I haven't moved on to the third book. Might be a little controversial. I would never recommend this book to someone. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Kate. Today we're going to tier rank all of the books that I've read so far this year. I think there's around 30 books, but a little disclaimer, I did not want to include audiobooks in this, but then I was like, I kind of want to talk about some because I literally just eat up audiobooks. So as I go through them, I'll mention if I listened to or read them. Sometimes I read and listen, do like a little hybrid. These are just my opinions on these books. I don't want this video to be too long, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts on these books, follow me on Goodreads. Sometimes I also post about them on Instagram, so check me out there at minigru.studios. So let's get started. But to go over my tiers, so the top tier that I have is no notes. These are books that I just absolutely loved. I feel like they changed the way that I see the world and just like impacted me a lot. Books that I just really wouldn't change. I really like the writing and everything about it is just like beautiful to me. Next I have She Ate, Onika Burgers. So She Ate is basically books that I just really liked, like She Ate, but it wasn't necessarily like a 5-star read. The third tier is no plot, just vibes. And that doesn't necessarily mean there was no plot in the book. It's more just books that made me feel a certain way, but maybe I don't remember like everything that happened in the book. I remember more about how they made me feel. These are like my 3, maybe up to 4-star books. The fourth tier is I really wanted to like you. These are books that maybe were like kind of hyped up in my head, like I was excited to read them, but it just didn't do it for me. And then I Can't is the last one, and that's just books that maybe I finished but I just didn't really like. They just didn't really do it for me at all. I can give them a little bit of credit, maybe like 1 star, and these are not in order. Okay, starting off with Winter and Sakao. That's an easy no plot, just vibes. This is a very short book and there wasn't much that happened in the book. There was like a little bit of tension between 2 characters, but it never really like developed into anything. But it was like such a cozy read. So this is kind of like the definition of the no plot, just vibes, is this book. I don't really remember much that happened in the book. Down the Drain by Julia Fox is next. You'll notice that I really like memoirs for some reason, especially because I listen to a lot of memoirs because mostly they're read by the person. I'm gonna put that one in She Ate because I actually really enjoyed her book on audio. I only listened to it and I ate this up. I think I was listening to it on a travel day and ended up finishing it like the next day. Her life is just so crazy, so it was really entertaining. Okay, next is Big Swiss, which I also listened to on audio. It was a pretty long audiobook and I just listened to it in a very short amount of time. I'm gonna say I really wanted to like you because I did. It's like a very hyped book, but I don't know, I just didn't do it for me. Like there were some parts that I really liked, but it just felt really long, and I think also could have been because I listened to it and didn't read it. I don't remember a ton that happens in it, but I think I just remember feeling disappointed. I feel like there was a lot of like lustful passion and that wasn't like followed through on, if that makes sense. Next is The Guest by Emma Cline. I actually read this on vacations, but I'm gonna put this in no plot, just vibes. It's kind of about a woman who just manipulates the people around her and gets in these situations, somehow gets out of them, and kind of follows her journey through that. I really liked it up until the ending, which was so anticlimactic for me, which is why I'm putting it in no plot, just vibes. Next is Milk Fed. I'm putting this in no notes. I actually really liked this book, which is weird because a lot of people say like if you like Big Swiss, you'll like Milk Fed, but I didn't really like Big Swiss, but I really liked Milk Fed. So it's just one of those like weird books, very indulgent. I read it really quickly. Make sure you read the trigger warnings. I think just in general, read trigger warnings before any book you read. Next we have Sula by Toni Morrison. This was my first Toni Morrison book that I've ever read and I really liked it. It was a shorter one. I think it was less than 200 pages, but her writing is just so amazing and very captivating. I have a few other books that I want to read by her. I'm gonna put this one in She Ate because she did eat. It's about these 2 girls that were friends as kids, but they kind of grew into different people. I think that's a very common thing that happens with friends that maybe have drifted apart, but you have so many memories with them as kids. And there was a TikTok trend where people would post videos and say, like, we were girls together. This book is where that's from. We was girls together was like a very powerful quote from this book. So also for this book, I feel like I wish I read it in a more academic setting because I I feel like sometimes when you read leisurely, like you miss out on some things, like answering deeper questions about it, and I feel like this would be a really good book for that. Take that as you will. I'm a fan. No, it was not for me. I will say I listened to this on audio, so maybe I just hated the narrator. It was just a whole book of someone complaining and just like not showing any redeeming qualities and just being kind of a hater, but like not doing anything about it. So I didn't like that one. The Alchemist, I'm like in between no plot, just vibes, and I really wanted to like you. I'll put it in no plot, just vibes, only because I feel like this book is marketed as like a self-help book, but I don't know, it just didn't hit the mark for me. I think if you go into reading this with the intention of reading it as a story, not as like this will change your life, which is what it's like most commonly marketed as, then it could be better. But I don't think it like changed my life. It depends on when you read this book. Like if you're in a part of your life where you're super unsure of what you want to do, or just need like a little push to kind of pursue something maybe you've been thinking about doing for a while, then I would recommend this book. But other than that, like, I don't know. And then there was like this weird part where it portrayed love in such a weird way that I just didn't agree with. That was kind of my only gripe with it. But Yellowface, I really liked this one. I'm gonna put it in sheet 8. This is an audiobook that I actually really enjoyed. I listened to this book. I thought it was so crazy and kind of just like impending doom on the main character, which was kind of just interesting to see how everything will unfold. I don't really know anything about the publishing industry, so it was interesting to kind of get like more background on that. I kind of enjoyed just seeing the main character jump through so many hoops to like not get caught for doing something bad. So I did like this one, especially on audio. Next is Paradise by Fernanda Melchor. I'm gonna put this one in no plot, just vibes. I really liked this book. It was very stream of consciousness. I think that's just like the writing style of the author. I thought it was a perfect length. If it was any longer, I might have rated it differently, but you really don't get a break at all with this book. I don't remember a ton that happens in this book. I do know that it's very violent and it really confronts a lot of like toxic masculinity from the main character and just like falling into the wrong situations. And I just remember explaining this as like an A24 movie, the way that everything was described. It felt very like dark and ominous, and it just has heavy themes, and I thought it was very impressive that the author could kind of portray all of those things into such a small book. I think it's like less than 200 pages for sure. Next is A Little Life, which I honestly like, I want to go with not ranking it because I would never recommend this book to someone just because of how like horrible the content is within the book. It just is very depressing. I think I was like genuinely in such a bad mood the whole time I was reading this book. But with that being said, the author does such a great job with character development that you feel so close to these characters, how they develop over years of their lives. I was also like confused because people would be like, oh, it only gets good at page blah blah blah, and like the good factor is like horrible things happening to someone. I just don't really understand the notion of like the book getting good. Like it furthers the plot, but like it just didn't feel right. Like I don't know what to do, you guys. I think I am, from a literary standpoint, I think the writing is incredible, so I am gonna put it in sheet 8. However, the subject matter is really, really tough, and it kind of was like, I can't imagine like thinking of all these bad things that can happen to a single character. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend this book. If someone asked me like, what's a good book to read, I would never say like, you should read A Little Life. Take that how you want to. Next, I'm Glad My Mom Died. It feels weird also rating memoirs. I will say sheet 8 for this one. I also listened to this one, and I did like Jeanette McCurdy. I did like hearing more of Jeanette McCurdy's story because I didn't really know anything about her except for that she was Sam on iCarly. So it was really interesting, and it makes me very sad. Like looking back on her acting and just like knowing what she was going through at the time feels like very impactful, especially for like other child actors. Like how can that be ethical in a lot of ways? They're Going to Love You, I actually just finished a few days ago. This was like a 3-star read. I'm gonna say no plot, just vibes. I just didn't feel super fulfilled with the outcome of the story. The whole plot is basically a daughter and a dad relationship that kind of was strained over like many years. And also it centers around ballet a lot, and I don't really know much about ballet, so I feel like if you're into ballet, that it would be like a really good book to read. Foster by Claire Keegan. I'm gonna say she 8 because it's about this girl in rural Ireland who gets fostered by this couple, and she just receives a lot more like affection and love that she ever did at home, and kind of how she sits with all of those feelings. You can read it in one sitting. I'll also do small things like these while I'm at it. I'm gonna put that in she 8 as well. This book has a little bit more of a historical aspect. It's about the Magdalen laundries in Ireland, which is like groups of girls that were deemed like wrong by society, so they ended up working in the church as free labor. Not a really good part of Ireland's history, but there is gonna be a movie adaptation to this. I think it comes out around Christmas time, which is perfect because that's kind of when the book was set. Solito, I just finished literally like a few hours ago. Instant 5-star. This book, I was bawling at the end. It's a memoir of a 9-year-old boy who migrates from El Salvador to USA, and like all the things he goes through on the way. He's also alone, no family with him, no one that he really knows, and like who he meets along the way. And I cried for him because the author writes it as if he was 9 years old. So there's a lot of things that if you're reading this as an adult, you can kind of pick apart things that he's describing that he might not understand as a 9-year-old boy, but you do. And it's just like one of my favorite books that I've ever read. I actually listened to a lot of this one as well, and I highly recommend that, especially if you don't know any Spanish or if you're not like a native Spanish speaker. There's a lot of Spanish. You can kind of get the context more of what he's saying from the way that he talks, where if you were just reading it might be a little bit difficult, but I do highly recommend that as an audiobook. But I did read like the last 2 chapters because I ran out of listening hours on Spotify. Next is The Power of Habit. If you haven't watched my last video, I am doing 75 hard right now, and part of that is reading 10 pages of like a self-help book or nonfiction, I guess. So this is what I chose because it's like very recommended for like self-help, but I just like was struggling. I was struggling to get through this. I am gonna put it in I can't. Like, I think there are things that you can learn from it, but it's very anecdotal. It doesn't outline like personally how you can change habits. And I hate comparing books that are in like self-help because like obviously they're different, but if you're looking to build habits, I would read Atomic Habits rather than this one. I read that one I think like last year. And like I said, I only read like 10 pages a day, and like as soon as I read my 10 pages, I was like, I'm not reading anymore until like the last chapter. I just wanted to get it over with. I'm gonna get all these memoirs out of the way. Again, I feel a little weird writing memoirs because that's just like that person's story, you know? So we'll do Fleas. I'm gonna put this in no plot, just vibes. And if you don't know who Flea is, he is the bassist in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I actually saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers in like June. This audiobook was all over the place. I feel like he kind of like hopped around a little bit, but I did enjoy like hearing his story. My favorite memoir and one of my favorite books, I'm going to put in no notes. It's Crying in H Mart. I loved this book. I thought it was so impactful for my life. I just thought the writing was incredible by Michelle Zauner. I'm also half Asian, half white like she is, and I feel like that is kind of like a hard thing to navigate, which is a whole identity thing that I think a lot of people who are mixed race struggle with. So I'm glad that I could relate to her on that. It just made me want to hug my mom. I actually gifted this book to her. Going along with that, which is kind of a similar theme, is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Into the no notes. I think the author is a poet, so everything that he writes about is very like descriptive and very embellished, which I really liked. I thought it added to his story. The last memoir on here is Everything I Know About Love. I'm gonna put this in I Really Wanted to Like You because I see this book everywhere. I wasn't like relating to a lot of things that she was talking about. Also, she's a little bit older than I am, so that might have like caused a little bit of a difference in my thought process on things, but let's do some romanticies. So we'll start with Fourth Wing. I loved Fourth Wing. I think I was super hyped about it because we were reading it as like a book club book. So I was like super excited to read it, and I really liked it. Honestly, just a really fun book. I liked all the hype around it. And then Iron Flame, I'm gonna put in She 8 because it felt a little bit slower than Fourth Wing, but I still really liked it. And I'm gonna continue to read the series once the new book comes out. Court of Thorns and Roses, I'm gonna say no plot, just vibes. Not that there wasn't a plot in the book, but a lot of the times people say you have to get through that first book to get to the second one, which is really good. And I'm gonna put the second one in She Ate. A lot of people loved A Court of Mist and Fury, and I really liked it. I just feel like it took me so long to read, but I still really liked it. I also felt like I needed a little bit of a break from romantasy, so I haven't moved on to the third book, which might be a little controversial. Next, Brave New World. I'm gonna put this in. I can't, unfortunately. So I've been trying to read more like classics. I think I'm gonna try to read a classic every month or so, but it just didn't do it for me. Like, I liked the premise of it, but I was reading, someone was describing it as like, the reason why you might not like this book as much is because it's been redone in so many ways, like through movies, TVs, other books. But with that being said, this was written in 1931. So this is like a very novel idea at the time, which I can appreciate, but I just felt really bored throughout. And I just didn't really like it. I didn't like the writing. I thought the first chapter or so was good, but it kind of just like was going all over the place. Next, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I'm gonna put this in I Really Wanted to Like You because I know that Sally Rooney is a very popular author. I have not read Normal People, which I still might give that one a shot, but as far as Conversations with Friends, it just like missed me. I didn't really like any of the characters that much, and it just was kind of like anticlimactic throughout. I definitely finished the book, so that's why I'm not putting it in like that I hated it. My Dark Vanessa, I'm gonna put no notes. My Dark Vanessa has a very, very hard subject matter to read, but it's about a teenage girl who is romanticizing a relationship with her teacher, which from an outside perspective, as the reader, you can see how clearly predatory and manipulative it is, but it can show how easy victims, especially children, can get manipulated and how they're forced to look at the reality of their trauma so far down the line, because it does switch from like her childhood self and then herself in the future and how she's still dealing with so much of that, what happened when she was a teenager. Very, very, very powerful, beautifully written. Again, really hard to get through. Next is The Wall, which is the first book that I actually finished this year. It's about this woman who wakes up and she's just like the only person on earth. I just realized that I took my glasses off. I have to put them on for the reading vibe. So she's basically just trying to survive, and it just details all of the mundane tasks she does every single day to just stay alive and how she goes through like the seasons and stuff. And while I was reading it, I was like, this book is so boring. But it's one of those where it's like once you finish, you're like, okay, like that was really powerful. I feel like the mundane parts is kind of like the point, like that's her life now. And like, what would you do if you were in that situation? And there's like a little bit of a plot twist at the end. It kind of like confronts a lot of like internal battles in a way. I'm gonna put this in no plot, just vibes, because really wasn't that much of a plot at all. There's not really much you can do with being the only person on earth with a few animals, but I thought it was a good book. The last book is The Only One Left. I'm gonna put this in She Ate because I don't really read murder mysteries, but this book was fun because there was so many plot twists where it almost became like satirical. It's like there can't be another one, and there always was. I really liked it. I feel like I would recommend this to someone who kind of wants like a fun, not really that serious read. I thought that was really good, and maybe I'll explore more murder mystery type books, but that's like the only one I've read in the past, like, I think ever, honestly. But yeah, that was me tier ranking all of the books I've read so far this year. Again, I didn't really want to say too much about these books. Obviously don't want to give spoilers. I usually leave reviews on Goodreads if you want to follow me on there. Also, if you want a part 2 to this video, the rest of the books that I read this year, let me know. I can do one of those at the end of the year. I think that would be kind of fun. If you have any recommendations based on my tier rankings or things you think I would like, let me know, because Solito, that book that I just finished that I really liked, was actually suggested by one of you guys. I do take your guys' recommendations. I have a lot of them on my Goodreads list. I'm reading Homegoing right now, which I'm so excited to read. I'm also reading this book called Educated. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. Make sure you comment down below if you like these kinds of videos. I'm always curious what you guys think. I post a lot of stuff about books on my Instagram story, so follow me there too. Other than that, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.